How's it going, everybody? And in this video, we're going to be talking about the Omicron variant of COVID, and we're also going to be discussing whether or not you should get the booster shot. And from the articles that I've read, my opinion on this is that everyone 100% should be getting the booster shot, and I've scheduled my appointment to get the booster shot. And so my reasoning for doing this is the following. So basically, with the Omicron variant, it has significantly more mutations than the Alpha or Delta variants. So these were the Alpha variant was the one that first started the whole shelter in place thing. There was another uptick that was a Delta variant, and now we're at this Omicron variant. It's originating from South Africa. The thing to note here about like why do you care about mutations is that the coronavirus has spike proteins, and it has on that spike protein a place called the receptor binding domain, and this is where the actual binding events happen in which the virus will infect one of your cells. And so the key things to take note here is that these new features on the spike protein as well as the receptor binding domain mean that it's physically different. So the original Alpha or Delta variants of COVID that the vaccines were targeting are not going to be as effective as they previously were at this Omicron variant. And that isn't to say that these vaccines for the Alpha or the Delta variants aren't still doing their job of reducing hospitalizations and reducing mortality. They are, and it's fantastic. But the issue is that the antibodies that your body makes after you've been vaccinated are not going to have as high affinity for the Omicron variant, is what the data is leading us to suggest. And it's still pretty early in the story here of the Omicron variant because we don't know how damaging or effective or powerful this new virus is or this new variant of COVID is. And so that's the reason why it's really important for everybody to be very diligent about getting these booster shots, because ideally we're going to avoid another huge uptick or wave of infections. So that's the reason why I personally believe that everyone should get this booster shot. And those are the key things to take note. And so questions you might have is like, if you initially got vaccinated with the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines, so these are called the mRNA vaccines, does it matter what you get as a booster shot? The answer is no. And if you initially got vaccinated with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, so that was the one dose vaccination, people do recommend that you get the mRNA vaccines. That would be the Pfizer or Moderna if you can. But from what we're seeing, it doesn't really even matter. The whole point is that whatever you can get, you just get it. And that is a huge thing to take note from this is basically don't be picky. Get what you can get. If you have a choice, if you had the J&J vaccine as your first vaccine and you get to pick, ideally you would pick the Moderna or Pfizer, but you could do another J&J if you wanted to. And the whole reason for doing this, just to be a little bit more explicit than I think the news stories are, is that by getting the booster shot, what that essentially does is it helps elevate the levels of antibodies in your body, in your bloodstream, so that if you ever did come across the Omicron variant, your body's going to be able to effectively recognize it and neutralize that variant much more quickly than it otherwise could, even if you've had that initial vaccination. So that's really important to make note here. And then finally, and I think this is a big question all of us have on our mind, is like, when are we finally going to get out of this pandemic? And the answer to that is basically when everybody who isn't vaccinated gets vaccinated. So we need to have more compliance, and if more of the public gets vaccinated, this will mean that it will reduce the number of hospitalizations and deaths resulting from this. And so if you haven't been vaccinated, you absolutely should get vaccinated. And so this is a very important public health issue right now. So I'm going to wrap things up with that, but let me know if you have any questions, and I hope everyone out there is doing well, and I'll talk to you guys next time.